Chapter 39. Hisao Yun Hisun saves a man on Bright Moon Ridge. Marshal Ping triumphs at Green Maple City. A few hundred yards from here, the old woman told the abbot, is a hill called Bright Moon Ridge. There's a shortcut to it by a steep path behind my house. On the ridge you'll find a young man practicing his catapult. Don't say anything, just kneel before him. And when he asks you, you can tell him all that's happened. He's the only man who can possibly save you, so hurry up and beg for his help. We can't count on it though, and if he isn't able to save you, they'll kill me too for talking. Quaking in his shoes, the abbot picked up the gourd which had been filled with wine, thanked the old woman, and climbed the hill behind her house, pulling himself up by the creepers. Sure enough, a few hundred yards away he reached a ridge where a young man was practicing his catapult. In the mouth of a cave he had placed a snow-white pebble no bigger than a copper coin, and as he took careful aim, each shot from his catapult found its mark. Drawing near, the abbot saw a fresh-complexioned, handsome young man in a military cap and a light grey battle dress. The youth was completely absorbed in his target practice when the abbot came over and fell to his knees before him. And just as he was about to question the abbot, a flock of sparrows flew up from the valley. "Wait while I shoot at these sparrows," cried the youth. He raised his catapult and one of the sparrows fell dead. Then he turned to the abbot, who was kneeling with tears in his eyes. "Please get up, father," he begged. "I know why you're here. That's why I'm practicing my marksmanship. I'm still not a perfect shot, though, and I haven't dared take action yet for fear something might go wrong. But now that you are here, I mustn't delay any longer. That scoundrel's last day has come. There's no time to be lost. Hurry up and take that wine back to the temple, and on no account show any despair or panic. Do whatever he tells you there, and don't dream of disobeying him. Then I will come and save you." Carrying the gourd, the abbot took the same path back to the temple. When he reached the inner courtyard, he found the wicked monk seated on the couch in the central room, a bright sword in his hand. "Why have you been so long?" demanded the monk. "I lost my way, and it took time to find this temple." "All right, kneel down." The abbot plumped down on both knees. "Nearer." But he dared go no nearer for fear of the sword. "If you don't come here," growled the monk, "I'll strike you right away." The abbot shuffled forward on his knees. "Take off your cap." With tears running down his cheeks, the abbot took it off. The wicked monk grabbed the abbot's bald head, then poured out the wine from the gourd and took a gulp. The wine in his left hand, he took aim with the sword in his right above the old man's crown. The abbot was fainting with fear. The wicked monk picked out the center of the skull, where he knew the brains were. When he struck, the brains would spill out, warm and delicious. He raised his sword, but before he could slice the abbot's head, a pellet flew in through the door with a whiz and hit him squarely in the left eye. Dropping his sword in dismay, he put down his wine, clapped a hand to his eye, and rushed out to the front courtyard. On the head of the bodhisattva sat a man, but as the wicked monk looked up, another pellet blinded him completely and he fell to the ground. The young man jumped down and went to the building at the back, where the terrified abbot was groveling on the floor. "Get up quickly, father," cried the young man. "We must leave at once. My bones are turned to water. I can't move. Get up, I'll carry you." He pulled the abbot up, hoisted him onto his back, and hurried out of the temple gate. After sprinting a dozen miles without taking breath, he put the old man down. "Well, father," he said, "you had a narrow escape. In future you should have nothing but good luck." Only then did the abbot recover his composure. He knelt down to kowtow his thanks. "May I ask my benefactor's name?" he said. "I simply wanted to rid the world of a pest," replied the young man. "I didn't go out of my way to save you, father. Now that you have escaped, you should make up for lost time. What need you ask my name?" Although the abbot repeated his question, the young man would not tell him. The old man prostrated himself and kowtowed 9 times. "I will take leave of my benefactor then," he said. "As long as I live, I shall try to repay your kindness." This said, he rose and went away. The young man, who was tired, entered a roadside inn to rest. He found another traveler seated there with a casket before him. The man was wearing a mourning cap, white hempen gown, and straw sandals. His face was ravaged with grief, and his cheeks were tear-stained. The young man clasped his hands in salute and sat down facing him. The world is quiet and at peace," the elder said with a smile. "How can you come to this inn and sit down so calmly after blinding a man with your catapult? Where are you from, sir? How did you hear of this?" "I was merely joking. It is a fine thing to cut off evildoers and save the good. May I ask your honorable name?" My name is Hisao Yun Hisun. I live at East Mountain, 6 or 7 miles from Chengtu. The other gave a start. There is a Mr. Hisao Hao Hisun who lives at East Mountain, 6 or 7 miles from Chengtu. Does he belong to your distinguished family? He is my father. How do you know him, sir? He is your father, exclaimed the elder. Then he told Hisao his name and reason for coming to Sichuan. At Tongqiang County Town, I saw Magistrate Yu, who gave me a letter for your worthy father, he said. But I was so eager to find my own father that I did not like to break my journey to call at your house. I know the old abbot, too, whom you saved just now. This is an unexpected encounter. Just as I am admiring your courage, I find you are Mr. Hisao's son. Well, friend, I salute you. Since you found my father, why didn't you go stay with him, sir? Where are you traveling now alone? Unhappily, my father is no more, replied Kuo Tianshan, weeping again. His bones are in this casket. I come from Huqiang, and I am carrying his bones home to bury. I am sorry, said Hisao, with tears in his eyes. But now that I have been lucky enough to meet you, sir, may I persuade you to come home with me to see my father? I should have called to pay my respects, but with my father's casket it is not convenient, and I am anxious to reach home for the burial. Give my compliments to your respected father, and tell him that in future, if possible, I shall pay him a visit. From his baggage he took Magistrate Yiu's letter, which he gave to Hisao Yun Hisun. He also produced 100 cash and asked the innkeeper to buy 3 measures of wine, 2 caddies of meat, and some vegetables. When their host had prepared a meal, Kuo and Hisao fell down. Fell too. You and I are like old friends from the start, brother. And that doesn't happen to many men, said Kuo. Indeed, the fact that I brought a letter from Shenxi for your father sets us apart from the ordinary run of new acquaintances. You have just done a remarkable deed, and one that nobody else today would dream of attempting. But I have a piece of advice to give you, if I may. I am young and was about to ask for your instruction. By all means, speak frankly, sir. To risk your life for the public good shows courage and gallantry. For this is not the spring and autumn period of the age of the warring states, where you could win fame by such exploits. Now that the whole country is united, a modern Qingkou or Nian Cheng would be considered lawless. With your character, looks, and talents, brother, to say nothing of your integrity and courage, you ought to serve the state in some capacity. Then, with your sword, you could win titles for your wife and sons on the battlefield, and make a name to be handed down in history. I tell you, brother, I studied the military arts as a boy to no purpose. For, owing to my father's trouble, for these 20 years I have led the hard life of a wanderer. I am old now and unfit for anything, but you are at the height of your youth and vigor. You mustn't throw away your opportunities. I hope you will remember an old man's words. You have scattered the clouds to let me see the sun, sir. I can't say how grateful I am for your advice. They went on to speak of other matters. The next morning, after paying the bill, Hisao saw Kuo 6 or 7 miles to the crossroad, and there with tears they parted. Hisao Yun Hisun went home, paid his respects to his father, and handed him Magistrate Yiu's letter. My old friend and I have neither met nor corresponded for 20 years, said Hisao Hao Hisun. I'm glad to know he is happy in his post. Kuo Tianshan and I were equally famous in our young days for our skill in the military arts. Unfortunately, we are both old now. When he has carried his father's bones and buried them, he will have fulfilled the ambition of a lifetime. Young Hisao remained at home to wait on his father. Half a year later, there was trouble between the tribesmen beyond Sungfan and the Han people over some crooked dealings at their common fair. The tribesmen were wild, with no respect for the law. Pouring in with swords and staves, they started a fierce fight. Government archers dispatched to the rescue were killed or wounded, and Green Maple City was taken by force. When the provincial governor reported this by express courier to the capital, the emperor was very angry. He ordered Marshal Ping Chi to wipe out the rebels and enforce the will of heaven. This edict received, Ping swiftly left Peking and set up his headquarters in Sungfan. When Mr. Hisao knew this, he sent for his son. I hear Marshal Ping has come from the capital to Sungfan to suppress the tribesmen, he said. He and I used to be friends. I want you to join the army, and when you say whose son you are, the marshal may keep you in his camp, in which case you'll have a chance to serve the state. This is the time for stout fellows to prove their worth. But you are old, father. I don't like to leave you. You shouldn't say that. I may be old, but my health is good. I eat well and sleep well, and don't need you to dance attendance upon me. If you make this an excuse for staying at home in comfort with your wife, then you are not a filial son, and I refuse to see you again. This speech effectively silenced the young man's scruples. He took his leave of his father, roped his baggage, and set out to join the army. We need not describe his journey in detail. One day, when he was less than 2 stages from Sung Fan, he left the inn so early that he had covered several miles before dawn. As he strode along, his baggage on his back, he suddenly heard footsteps behind him. Jumping to one side, he whirled around to confront a man with a club, and as this fellow lunged at him, Hisao shot up a foot to send him sprawling. Then he seized the rascal's club and prepared to whack him over the head. "Don't hit me," cried the man on the ground. "Let me off for my master's sake." "Who is your master?" demanded Hisao, staying his hand. It was light enough now for him to see this fellow, a man in his 30s with a stubbly growth on his chin, who was wearing a short jacket and hempen shoes. "My name is Mu Nai. I was a pupil of Kuo Tien Shan." Hisao pulled him up to question him, and Mu Nai explained how he had been a highwayman till he met Kuo and became his pupil. "I know your master," said Hisao. "Where are you going?" "I heard that Marshal Ping was raising troops at Sung Fan to crush the tribesmen, and I was on my way to join the army when I ran out of money. That's why I sit on you, brother, just now. Forgive me." "I'm going to join the army too," said Hisao. "Let's go together, shall we?" Munai was delighted and offered to act as Hisao's bodyguard. Upon reaching Sung Fan, they handed in their applications at the army headquarters. The marshal was ordered to be questioned as to their reasons for coming, and when he knew that this was Hisao Hao Hisun's son, he admitted him and appointed him as a lieutenant. Munai was allotted a soldier's rations. Some days later, when all necessary provisions had arrived, Marshal Ping summoned his officers to the headquarters. Hisao Yun Hisun, arriving early, found 2 commanders there. He saluted them and stood to one side. "When Brigadier General Ma led out his troops the other day," said one of the commanders, "he and his horse fell into a pit dug by the tribesmen in Green Maple City. Ma was seriously wounded and died a couple days later, but his body hasn't yet been found. Since he was a nephew of a powerful eunuch, the chamberlain of ceremony at court, a letter has arrived from the palace insisting that his corpse must be found. Heaven knows what disciplinary action may be taken if it isn't. What's to be done? I've heard there's no water or grass for miles around Green Maple City," said the other. "You have to wait for the snow to melt in spring and run down the mountain before men and beasts can find water. If we let our forces there, we'd start dying off in a few days of thirst. How could we fight?" Hisao stepped forward. "You need have no fears on that score, gentlemen," he said. "Not only are there grass and water at Green Maple City, but the place is unusually rich in rivers and pastures. Have you been there, Lieutenant?" "No, I haven't been there." The 2 commanders snorted. "In that case, how do you know?" "I read in an ancient history that this part abounds in water and vegetation." The 2 officers looked disgusted. You can't believe all you read in books," they said. Hisao dared say no more. Presently the clapper sounded, and drums and cymbals were heard at the gate. A council of war was held and orders issued. The 2 commanders were to head the main force and assist Hisao Yun Hisun, whose vanguard of 500 foot soldiers was to lead the way. The marshal himself would command the rear guard. The officers hastened to carry out these orders. Taking Munai with him, Hisao led his 500 infantrymen by a forced march to a huge steep mountain on which they could faintly discern the flags of the enemy garrison. This was Chair Mountain, the gateway to Green Maple City. Hisao gave the orders to Mu, "Take 200 men by small paths to the other side of the mountain, and wait at the entrance to the main approach. As soon as you hear our cannon, shout, 'Kill!' and come to our rescue. Mind you don't keep us waiting." Munai assented and left. Hisao ordered another 100 men to ambush themselves in the valley, and rush out as soon as they heard gunfire, shouting that the main force had arrived. These dispositions made, he led the remaining 200 men in a wild charge at the mountain. There were several hundred tribesmen at the top, hiding in caves. When they saw men charging up, they swarmed out to give battle. With his catapult at his belt and his sword in his hand, Hisao charged fearlessly at the head of his men, cutting down all the tribesmen in his path. Daunted by his prowess, the enemy prepared to fly as the 200 drove forward, with all the force of a hurricane. Then a cannon roared, and the men in the valley shouted, "The main army is here," and raced up the slope. At this point also, the 200 men behind the mountain rushed forward, waving their banners and shouting, and the panic-stricken tribesmen fled for their lives, thinking the main army had already taken Green Maple City. They could not escape Hisao's catapult, however. Smashing their noses and slashing their lips, he cut off their retreat. Then he marshaled his men into one force, and bellowing with rage, they mowed down those few hundred tribesmen as easily as you slice melons, capturing innumerable banners and weapons. After this, Esau rested his men for a while, and bade them march boldly forward. Soon they came to a dense forest. After marching for several hours, they crossed it and reached a great river, from the bank of which they could see Green Maple City several miles away. As there were no boats in sight, Esau ordered his men to chop down bamboos and make rafts. This was quickly done, and they ferried across. "Our main force is behind," said Esau. "For 500 men to take this city is no joke. Hence the main thing is not to let the enemy know our strength." He ordered Munai to lead his 200 men with a bundle of dried bamboo apiece and rope ladders made out of captured flags to a quiet place west of the city. There they were to scale the city wall and set fire to the stores of fodder. "Then we can storm the east gate," said Esau. So they made their plans. Meanwhile, the two commanders had reached Chair Mountain with the main force, but did not know whether Esau had crossed it or not. "This is a dangerous terrain," they said. "There must be enemy ambushes here. We had better fire our cannon hard so that they dare not come up, and then announce a victory." Just then, however, up flew a rider with a dispatch from the marshal ordering them to press on with all speed to relieve Esau Yun Hisun, for Esau, being young, was liable to advance too rashly. The commanders dared not disobey, but mustered their men and galloped to the river, where they found ready-made rafts, and as they ferried across, the sky was lit with flames from Green Maple City. Esau was even then bombarding the east gate. The fire in their midst threw the tribesmen into panic, and when the main troops came up to reinforce the vanguard, our army held the city in a grip of iron. The tribesmen opened the north gate and fought desperately, but a few dozen horsemen only broke through the encirclement and escaped. By this time the marshal had arrived from the rear guard, and the remaining citizens, each with incense and flowers on his head, knelt to welcome him into the city. He gave orders to extinguish the flames and pacify the people, forbidding the least unruliness among the troops. Then he wrote a report and sent an officer to Peking with the news of victory. Esau had welcomed the marshal too and kowtowed to him, and the marshal in joy presented him with sheep and a keg of wine, and praised him warmly. Over 10 days later, a reply was received from the court. The emperor ordered Ping Chi to return to Peking. The two commanders were to wait at their post for promotion, and Esau's appointment as lieutenant was confirmed. The marshal handed over to Esau the administration of the city. After seeing Marshal Ping off to the capital, Esau returned to Green Maple City and wrote a detailed report of the damage to its walls and the destruction of its granaries caused by the fighting. The marshal then granted him permission to repair the city, instructing him to go about the work carefully and to draw up another report after its completion for the emperor. But to know how Esau repaired the city, you must read the next chapter.